Do you think child slavery is good or bad?
Do I think?
Oh my God. Tough question here. Let me think. Child slavery. Sitch, do you have a position on child slavery? You ever thought about maybe child slavery? I mean,
child slavery.
let's say 10,000 kids a year were being trafficked into the United States as slaves. You think we should separate them from the adult with them to see if they're trafficked or not?
Yeah, but here's the question: if we save one child slave, there'll just be another child slave in the future, right?
Oh, true.
So what's the point?
I guess you're right.
Yep.
I'm against child slavery myself. I think it's evil.
That's well.
I know. I'm gonna go out on a limb here.
It's all applaud Adam. Oh, it's a brave position.
I think the slavers we should castrate and kill.
I'm against child slavery. Oh my God.
I'm all for capital punishment for child slavers.
I bet you would never tweet that out. You're gonna get canceled.
Me?
If you
I
tweet
tweeted
that
it out later today. I tweeted it out earlier today, right?
Oh my God, he's so brave.
I tweet it out every day.
So brave.
How do you think I get backpats on Twitter?
I think I'm gonna become A-team just because of that position. Just because of the bravery.
Holy shit! We just got an A-team recruit.
The bravery of being against child slavery. Oh, it's just gonna turn me to A-team.
There we go.
Child slavery is good or bad? Well, if there's so many ways that we could define this, does going to school count as a slave? In general, I think child slavery is probably bad.
I'm not trying. It's not a gotcha.
Okay, yeah, I would say child slavery is probably bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Destiny's like, school is fucking slavery. I agree. Don't make kids go to school. That is bad.
I agree that child slavery is bad. I'm glad we agree
Not letting them vote is the worst.
on that.
That's
Now, there are more slaves around on Earth today than there have been at any other point in human history. They're all over the world.
Is that true? I mean, that seems like a wild accusation.
Well, I guess it depends how you define slavery. Because if they're just like, are they including people working in chain sweatshops as slaves?
Well, even so, I mean, there were, like during biblical times, it seems like half the population was slaves.
Yeah, but that's the real issue here. Is that also this could be because the population of the Earth is so much larger than it ever was. Like there could be more slaves than there ever were, but proportionally, it's like a lot less. Like maybe it's like, I don't know, 1% of the population is enslaved versus 20% of the population being enslaved, 1,000 years ago.
Do you remember the slavery conversation in The Narrow Corridor, the follow-up book to Why Nations Fail, where he talks about the cage of norms and how in some societies you get a better deal if you become the slave of a wealthy benefactor instead of going it alone. So a lot of people opt into slavery in some of these places in the world.
Sure, that's I mean, they even talk about that. He even kind of riffs on that in Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
Some people were some people, when Daenerys frees some of the slaves, they actually want to they have to go back to Daenerys and ask her to allow them to sell themselves back into slavery, because depending on how they were enslaved, they were basically better off in some weird ways. Now, I don't want this to seem like I'm advocating for slavery, because I'm not. But
yeah, no, it's a terrible situation altogether to be in a situation where you're like, man, I'd be better off as a fucking slave. Like, you are at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, that speaks to how fucked up the living situations are for some people in certain countries. Yes, definitely.
So, but if you, in some nations, like if you aren't protected by people, you're just going to be the victim of rape gangs, like everywhere. So they're saying, I'm going to sell myself into slavery, so I'm just protected from people. Yeah, it's a sad situation to be in, but I mean, that book totally just like spelled out slavery in a way that I had never even conceived of. Yeah, it's crazy.
So,
but I just wondered. I wondered if Vaush was including those slaves in his numbers, and I don't know why. Because I mean, it's just as bad being in any kind of slavery.
According to the Global Slavery Index, in 2018, there were 40.3 million slaves in the world, with the majority existing in India, China, Pakistan, and North Korea.
So, is it 40 million?
Yeah, 40.3 million. Yes.
Oh, 40.3. Okay, 40
yes.
million. So 40
40
million.
million.
Because I don't know what the population was of the Earth back in Egypt times. In Egypt times, you know, Egypt still exists, right?
Back when
Sitch, why
Egypt
would you
used to
say
exist.
such? Why would you say such a dumb thing, Sitch?
Let me
Egypt
see.
times.
How many slaves existed in Egypt's time?
In Egypt time. You know, Google has an answer for that. In Egypt's heyday of slavery.
Right.
I'm just going to pretend this isn't going. This isn't
And
happening.
the supply lines that we get our stuff from, it relies on child slavery. So I think that it's bad that those things happen. That when I buy a thing, when I buy a computer or an iPhone or something, I look at that and it's like,
This is an old chestnut for Vaush. He goes back to this argument regularly. I don't like this argument because it's a rhetorical trick, is basically what he's doing here. He wants to make a correlation between child slavery and capitalism. That's the only reason why he goes down this road.
So, well, I wasn't really listening because I was distracted.
By Egypt times? You were like,
by
oh my
Egypt
God, I
times.
found the perfect website. It's all about Egypt times.
So I did. No, there are estimates about the global human population, and the estimates for the population during year 1. Okay, so year 1 AD is between 300 million and 170 million.
Okay. So
Okay, and so yeah, so that's why we have more. So obviously there weren't. So 40 million people were enslaved back then. That'd be some massive percentage of the population, right?
yeah, but so my argument is half the population were slaves. It's like 150 million.
Well, I don't. Yeah, but that's probably not true though.
Well, you don't know. I mean, most of Egypt was a slave economy. How do you think they built those pyramids? Think they paid $15 minimum wage on those?
Well, actually,
pyramids?
with Egypt, I thought a lot of that's been debunked, that Egypt didn't have slaves for a lot of the pyramid stuff. I mean, I'm
Oh,
sure they
really?
did for a lot of the manual labor, but a lot of it was actually skilled labor.
They used a market economy.
Right. Well, I don't know about that, but the point is, yeah, obviously, if the global population today is 7.8 billion, and 2,000 years ago it was 200 million, then yeah, obviously, the numbers are going to be very different. Though that's not really applicable, because you'd have to say, well, what percentage of the population would be a more apt indicator of how slavery has gotten better today than it was back then.
Sargon's in the chat making fun of me.
He should make fun of you fucking Egypt times.
Sargon, you're the history master. I don't claim that throne, okay? Like, I'm here to make jokes and laugh at things.
So this is the Jon Stewart defense. I'm a comedian.
Well, yes, basically. I've read very little history, and just in the context of like why nations fail in narrow corridor, stuff like that. Yeah. Because I'm really interested in like human motivation. What motivates people to become a slave? Well, you don't want to die.
True.
I don't know. This is really weird. Vaush is not really making a good argument here. His rhetoric in this is not great. Never say "let me think" in a debate. Words to live by.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Oh, you didn't use the "let me think."
You can take time to pause and to question something. It depends what it is. If someone says, "Is child slavery
Not
bad?"
if
then yeah,
rhetoric.
obviously that's not the "let me think" moment. But
Not if your rhetoric is your game, and Vaush has admitted that all he cares about is rhetoric.
there you go.
Like in a dialectic, yeah, let me think. Let's go down this path together. But
Right.
not in a debate where it's all about rhetoric. Hell no. I love how Destiny calls him out continually in this talk too about the rhetoric thing. Just likes to point out to everybody, look, he's doing that rhetoric thing again.
Sweatshop or something, or like something misfortune touched this item at some point along the line. Is that a feeling you get? Do you ever think like it would be a better world if that wasn't the case, if I could rely on fair market treatment?
For sure.
So there's two answers to this question. You can make child slavery illegal worldwide, or you can make capitalism illegal worldwide. Which is the better answer? Which is the better solution to that problem? that Vaush is
Right.
bringing up.
Well, but here's the thing: is that yeah, if people gave a fuck enough, and some people do give a fuck enough, they say, okay, I'm only gonna buy things that can be sourced back to, correct labor avenues. I'm only gonna buy things
Yeah.
made in America, et cetera,
No
et cetera.
blood
And some people
diamonds.
do that, sure. And here's the thing: if everyone did that, the problem would be solved. And the reason the problem isn't solved is because fucking most people don't do that because most people don't give a fuck. And so, yes, those people, myself included, are not living up to their moral principles in that fashion, 100%. And you just have to be honest with yourself and bite that bullet and say, look, I could be a more moral person. I could follow my principles better by doing this, even though it would be a lot of extra work for me to do this.
I source all my stuff. I'm not playing that game. I'll make computer chips in my spare room if I have to.
Exactly.
I'm not playing. Don't laugh. I'm serious. I don't go for child slavery.
Adam is mining the minerals and soldering the chips in his basement. Yeah.
We don't have
his
basements
computer.
in California. Knock it off.
For everything that I buy.
For sure.
Okay, I completely agree with that. And institutionally, you think we should push for fair labor rights all around the world to the extent that we can.
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
But you think it's probably okay for people to like buy an iPhone.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's the general vibe that I get here. I think that these institutions are generally harmful and should be institutionally opposed.
Okay,
but-
I understand this. Let me ask you this question, okay? Mm-hmm. Do you agree that buying an iPhone that might have been made by a slave at some point, that's an unfortunate thing that we should try to avoid, right?
I don't.
This isn't a
know
trick
if I can
question, it's
criticize
just
a
like-
person for getting an iPhone.
Rhetoric, just off the rhetoric train here. Oh my God, it's such bad
Right.
rhetoric.
Right.
Sure.
When Sitch does that, I'm like, I'm going in for the kill. Look, he's stuttering.
But like,
I
if
think
we
it's
could
good if
avoid
you
it, it'd be
don't.
nice to avoid it. It's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Do you think that carries the same moral weight as locking a slave in your basement and forcing that child to build you an iPhone? Do you think these two things are the same, or do you think that it's a little bit different, that one is worse
No,
than the other?
I think those are different.
Okay, that's my issue. My issue isn't that a lefty merely exists in a system where maybe he buys something from a child slave. My issue is when they have the slave in the other room working for them. And then when you say, well, hold on, dude, isn't that kind of crazy? You're like, whoa, bro, you've bought iPhones that are touched by slaves as well. It's the same thing. That's my problem. My issue isn't that lefties just exist in a capitalist society and are just, you can't help it. My issue is that there are things that you can help. You could
my
pay workers a lot of money.
And this is so bullshit that Vaush doesn't have this position. And this is why I don't believe he doesn't have this position. Because the socialist position has always been the rich should pay more into society.
Yeah.
Significantly more until they're not even rich anymore. Right? So the contention here isn't if someone was a socialist and they didn't have very much money. Okay, they were basically struggling to get by. And they weren't living out to their socialist economic principles because they're just scraping by. That's a far cry different than some fucking YouTuber who's making 6 figures, maybe even 7 figures, okay, who actually has the money to live the principles that they preach comfortably. If that person doesn't fucking live their principles, what hope is there for anyone to live their principles? And that's the real point here.
Totally. What's the point in even having the principles?
Right. And not even if you're just well off enough to do it, but if you're going to position yourself as a leader of the community, then you extra have to live the principles that you're preaching, because you're supposed to be the paradigm. You're supposed to be the example for people to follow.
Exactly. The exemplar.
And I can't fathom that Vaush honestly doesn't agree with that.
Well, they agree with it in certain contexts because they're always policing each other on, oh, you police your community poorly. You have your you let your community get away with stuff. They're always talking about that kind of stuff. So they are comparing notes on right and wrong behaviors all the time.
Well, and that's also why this is bullshit too, is that for all these lefties, it's like, oh, if I find that you tweeted something, 2 years ago that's problematic. I'm going to bring it up and try to get you canceled. So there's all this energy and effort and motivation towards, you saying the right or wrong thing, moral policing in that way, but there's zero energy in moral policing how the fuck you spend your money and whether you actually live your socialist principles economically or not. There's zero fucking moral policing in that regard by other socialists. And that just really shows you how fucking bullshit this whole thing is.
Totally, because they're like, policing speech is easy, very easy. Where the rubber meets the road is economically. Your bank account, living your principles there is where it counts.
Well, and also it's because they can say, oh, I never said this. I never said the N word or the R word or the F word or whatever word is the problem. I've never said any of these words, but they can't say, well, I've never not, spent my money towards socialist causes as I roll around on my pile of Patreon dollars.